First up, we have Professor Andrew Carton. Closer in us to age than our other presenters, Professor Carton attended both Rutgers and Duke, and most definitely did not play for either of their basketball teams. Please get up for Professor Andrew Carton.
Thank you. Before I start, I'm just curious, how long did you practice that? That was amazing rapport. Please tell me you practiced that repeatedly. Second question I have is this an elaborate April Fool's Day joke on the faculty? It may be, at least from our perspective. All right, well, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk. Today, I'm going to talk to you about how when we think about the present day, we see what's around us, and then we attempt to look into the future. Oftentimes today we will see very clearly, but when we look into the future, we have very blurry vision. I've been fascinated by this one question. Why do 70% of people feel disengaged from their work? Repeatedly, polls since the 1970s have found that 70% of people feel disengaged from their work. I've been really stumped by this question, and a lot of my research interests have been sparked by it. People feel disengaged from their work for a number of reasons. One of the foremost reasons is because they feel a lack of purpose at work. So they don't feel like their actions every day are hitched to something bigger than themselves, which is typically how purpose is defined. So most theorists, needs theorists, and values theorists will talk about purpose as one of the 3 to 4 most important drivers of our everyday behavior. And one of the biggest challenges and one of the biggest reasons why employees don't feel like they have a sense of purpose each day is because of how purpose is articulated to them by leaders. So oftentimes leaders will have to think about projecting into the future, maybe 5, 10, 15 years, and they have to think about where they want their organizations to be. What do they want the organization's destination to be? So I want you just to take a moment and think about you personally or professionally. What do you want to achieve in, let's say, 2025, 10 years from now? All right, so if you think about what you want to achieve, this is the kind of thing that a leader has to think about, construct a vision of the future, and then articulate that vision of the future. And many times we'll hear visions such as, we want to be recognized for excellence, or we want to aspire to create a better life for many people, or we want to aim to achieve excellence in everything that we do. And these things sound perfectly grand and important and meaningful, but the problem is that if you think about the way vision is defined, it actually undermines the very essence of what a vision should be. If you think about the word vision itself, it's actually quite meaningful and interesting. Vision actually means to be able to see something. So if you're going to communicate a vision to me, I should be able to see something in my mind's eye. It should elicit some kind of image in my mind. And that's exactly what these types of visions don't do as often as we see them. Well, what kinds of leaders get them right? Well, let's go through a couple of examples. Lufa Farms is one example. So a corporation that focuses on urban farming, their vision for the future is a city of green rooftops. Every single building in a cityscape is going to have a farm on top of it. Exobionics, they have a vision of the future where they create robotic suits that people can wear that allow people to walk, paralyzed people to walk. So their vision is by 2022, 1 million people will get up and take their first steps. And then one of my personal favorites, Toys R Us. Their vision is to put joy in kids' hearts and a smile on parents' faces. So these kinds of visions have ambient graphic detail, very clear, crisp images that you can see in your mind's eye. A few colleagues and I tested the effectiveness of image-laden visions versus abstract visions just to make sure that our intuition was correct, which is that image-laden visions are more impactful. And we did find that it is the case. Image-laden visions are more impactful for a number of different organizational outcomes that are held in high esteem by managers, such as coordination, motivation, and then memory retention. Also, last but not least, organizational performance, group performance, and individual performance. So overall, we found that vivid visions, visions with graphic ambient detail, are better than abstract visions. But we also found that most leaders tend to communicate visions very abstractly. And this is one of the reasons this dates to something called temporal construal, which is as we think further out into the future, we tend to think very abstractly. So over 95% of leaders actually communicate abstract visions. So there's a disconnect between what leaders should do and what they actually do. So the natural next question is, well, how do we correct for this blurry vision bias? Well, we asked a number of mid-level and senior-level managers to construct a vision of the future. And so they did that without any other instructions from us. So they went ahead and they did that. And the vision imagery was measured on the vertical axis from 0 to 25. And they constructed visions that had some imagery, but not a whole lot. And then we asked them to inject or imbue their visions with a lot of image-laden words, image-based words, such as nouns like a child, physically defined, very clear objects that you can visualize in your mind's eye, and then verbs that connote very observable behavior, such as smiling or walking. We asked them to do that, but it didn't work out so well. So what we found is that when we told them exactly the types of words that they should use, they ended up creating visions that were actually quite abstract. This is actually something that we were expecting, and the reason is because of how we think about language. So if you think about language, the language center in your brain is actually nested within the prefrontal cortex. So the way we think about language is in terms of symbols. And when we think about symbols, we actually think at a very high level, very abstract level. So ironically and paradoxically, telling people to focus on visions that are based on images actually makes them think at an abstract level. So we needed to find a way to bypass this, to sidestep this characteristic of people's behavior or cognition. And what we did was we came up with a nudge that was called the time machine test, where we created this contraption. We didn't really create it, but we told people about this contraption, the time machine. We asked them to step into the time machine and project forward 10 years into the future and to get out of the time machine and then describe what they see in front of them. What's the state of the world that they see when their vision has been realized? Let's say they push a product to market and that product has influenced people in a positive way. Describe the world around them in a way that captures let's say, the facial expressions that people have when they're consuming a product or experiencing a service that you've created. And when they do that, it turns out that even if they don't focus at all on the language that they should be using, but we ask them to use words that capture that mental image, it turns out that they actually create visions that are far more image-laden than when we tell them exactly the types of words that they should use. So the clear takeaway here is that if you want to create a compelling, vivid vision of the future, don't worry about wordsmithing. Instead, ask people or impel people to project into the future, take a mind trip into the future, and then to describe what they see in front of them, and the vivid words will just flow naturally. Thank you very much.